What is up, guys? I just woke up on my way to work. It's really cold. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the Marshall Islands because, it's for a project, and yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the Marshall Islands are a community of Pacific Islanders in between the Philippines and Hawaii. They've had a lot of tragic things happen to them over time due to the U.S.'s nuclear testing on the islands. And yeah, I just feel like this is a community that's really not talked about. I actually didn't even know about it until my anthropology class. Yeah, I just want to spread awareness on the Marshall Islands because really, like, no one knows about them. They're just a community that really should be talked about more. Anyway, to start off, I guess I'll just talk about briefly about their history. So apparently sometime during 2000 BC, a group of Pacific Islanders from Micronesia found the islands and now inhabit it and have been inhabiting it for thousands of years. It was first discovered by Spain and then Germany, but they didn't really do anything with them. Then Japan came and they made military bases. That was kind of bad. And then, America comes over and they just kind of battle Japan for the land, and they're like, it's mine now. The US takes the land and they start setting up their own military bases on there. Then they just start doing some nuclear testing. So this was during the time of World War II as well. During that time, the US had the Manhattan Project, and we were trying to end the war with Japan. We made the bombs, we dropped the nukes on them. Yeah, it was pretty bad. But it ended the war. But, us being America, we decided to continue making bombs for the power. And we did our testing at the Marshall Islands. So yeah, that's kind of bad for the Marshallese. Alright, so here we are in work. Anyway, so back to the Marshall Islands. So they were essentially treated like guinea pigs after World War II. They were just used for testing. There was one bomb in particular. It was called Castle Bravo. And 5 hours after the detonation, it began to rain radioactive fallout. No one knew that it was radioactive fallout. And so children played in it because they thought it was snow. And then they even ate the fallout. That makes some pretty adverse health effects. Yeah, so people were severely burned. Everyone was just untreated. Yeah, the Marshallese people basically didn't have rights. It's kind of like another moment in history we all know about. Somewhere in Germany. The Marshall Islands were never the same because of radiation. Both radiation and modernization, with the introduction of money and capitalism, people became more selfish. They held on to their money. Prior to that, when they would have dinners, they would just create a bunch of food and just pass the plate through houses and families. But they don't really do that as much anymore. It's just really sad because their culture is so adversely affected due to the United States. So after the Manhattan Project, the US kind of took all of that radioactive material like plutonium and stuff that they were using in the continental US and just moved it all to one of the islands and just covered it with concrete. Now, that doesn't really do anything. That doesn't actually solve the issue. That doesn't clean anything up. It's imagine if you're cleaning your room and you just shoved all your stuff under the bed. That doesn't clean anything. Doesn't get rid of the problem. It's still there. So now all the radioactive material is in a dome on an island. It's a really small island, and it's literally about to touch the ocean. Once the ocean touches the dome, we're gonna have radiation poisoned seafood, and it's gonna become a global issue. That's gonna be really bad. That's gonna be extra bad. Yeah, so the U.S. essentially using the Marshall Islands like a landfill and a wasteland that they can conduct whatever experiments they want on. It's essentially environmental racism. They don't care about the Marshallese, and they're just using their land for whatever they want. It's kind of like in history when the Europeans came over and first colonized the United States, not caring for Native Americans. That's an American thing. Anyway, so this goes into the Nader and Gusterson theory of nuclearism, where nuclear colonialism externalizes harm. The islands are seen as unimportant, and the U.S. doesn't want to conduct their experiments on the mainland, so they just use one of these territories that they own and use it for their experiments. That way they don't have any risks on the mainland, they don't have to set up an area for it, and they don't have to deal with it. You know, out of sight, out of mind. Another part of that theory is secrecy, and these bomb testings aren't taught in school. Yeah, I didn't even know about the Marshall Islands until I took this anthropology class, and much less about the bomb testings that happen there. Even on the Marshall Islands themselves, they don't even teach about these nuclear tests. All right, hello. This is Anna.
Hi.
Do you think it should be, talked more about in like school and stuff?
I think so. I think we don't talk about enough about different cultures, especially like smaller cultures. You know, we always learn about like world history. You know, we learn about like Europe, we learn about China, but I don't even know where the Marshall Islands are.
Yeah.
You know, and that's definitely
exactly.
something where it's like you hear about what they're experiencing and the fact that you didn't even know they exist. You know, and it kind of sucks to know that they're going through such terrible experiences and you didn't even know they existed. And then you want to help, but it's like, who's actively trying to help? You know, you don't know who is helping, because I don't think enough people know to try to even help. So
during my anthropology class, we had guest speakers from the Marshall Islands come in and talk about their experiences living on the Marshall Islands, their experiences with radiation, and just their overall culture. The whole group explained to our class that they don't really learn anything about the nuclear tests beyond just the date, March 1st. And March 1st was the date of the Castle Bravo bombing, which was definitely the worst one out of the 67 bombs that they dropped on the islands. And so with these nuclear tests, the US government doesn't really do anything. They actually pretended like the Marshall Islands was just like a tropical vacation spot to get people to work there and clean everything up. Some of their claims include that there was only one bomb, the Bravo detonation, that caused damages or injuries. We know that that's kind of not really true, because when you have just one nuke, it completely destroys the environment and the radiation is just left there. They also claim that the exposure to the radioactive fallout from the Bravo was accidental, but if it was accidental, they would treat them instead of just having scientists go over and observe them. The US also claims that only 4 islands were affected by nuclear weapons testing. Since they're in such close vicinity to each other, that entire region is just affected by all the radiation. The US also decided that only people alive on March 1st and living on one of 2 islands were entitled to health care. All the other ones were just kind of out of luck. The US also claims that it's met its obligation to the Marshallese people because the US believes that they cleaned up the land and provided enough health care. That's also not true, which is very disappointing. That's also the point of this video. The Marshallese people also can't even qualify for a lot of insurances because of their history with radiation. So along with the effects of the radiation on the overall health of the people, it also affected just generations of Marshallese. Miscarriages were usual for Marshallese women. They would have what they would call apple babies, babies with growth defects, babies like missing certain limbs, organs, or having too many of them. You know, radiation just caused extremely adverse effects on their offspring. The apple babies literally look like real life Squidwards.
No, they don't.
Yeah, I know, right?
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. Yeah, so while we're on that topic, SpongeBob was actually based on the Marshall Islands. You know Bikini Bottom? That's Bikini Atoll. That's the bottom of the Bikini Atoll. Isn't that mind blowing? Yeah, that blew my mind in the class. Yeah, so it's just like one big form of mass numbing. You think about Bikini Bottom, you don't think about nukes. You don't think about radiation. You think about SpongeBob. It's just really sad that like the only connection anyone really has to with the Marshall Islands is SpongeBob. I really think that the population should be more aware of the Marshall Islands. And then another thing in pop culture, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the game Pocket God. That was pretty popular on the phones a long time ago. I remember playing it on my iPod Touch. So that game, the entire premise is just killing like Pacific Islanders or just like messing around with them, throwing volcanoes and stuff. It's essentially racism. They're just painting Pacific Islanders in this light of being a primitive community, not really worth anything. They're like almost like lesser humans. Pretty messed up. This is a pretty incredible case of mass numbing. Almost the entirety of pop culture is essentially mass numbing. There's one article that we read about in Anthropology called The Culture of Everyday Life by Shirley A. Fedorek. She basically explains how effective pop culture is in influencing society. So with stuff like SpongeBob or like games like Pocket God, painting Pacific Islanders in a really bad light, it really like influences the rest of society to not think that they're important or living in like a bad situation. It really affects how aware the general U.S. society is about, Pacific Islanders and the tragedies that's happened with them, especially in the Marshall Islands. They're not primitive people. They're a colorful community with a culture as complex, if not more, than ours. We really should treat them better. But yeah, come on. The Marshallese are cool. When they say hello or goodbye, they use the word Yagwe, which means you are a rainbow. Like Skittles, you know what I mean? Taste the rainbow. You are the rainbow. Yeah, so why are we treating a community where they literally call each other rainbows as greetings? Why are we treating them in this manner of not giving them any health care and using their land like a wasteland? Pretty messed up if you ask me, or probably anyone with morals. The Marshallese, they have a really familial culture. They're very interconnected. Even though they live on separate islands, they also have very unique ways of ocean navigation, and they were able to very accurately navigate the ocean without modern technology or like references. They would literally just feel the waves of the water and get place to place. It's crazy. Now the territory struggles with high suicide rates and high alcoholism rates. Diabetes and cancer are the two top causes of death on the island, and largely in part due to the radiation that their ancestors have absorbed in the past. The environmental issues like rising sea levels and the degradation from nuclear testing really destroyed most of their habitable land. So now they're facing a lot of unfortunate issues due to the US nuclear testing. So yeah, I just want to talk today about this community and how they've really gotten the short end of the stick here. Nukes are bad, okay? Alright, bye.